This time, I can stand before you, whereas in other scenarios, we are at a memorial.
Saturday, May 18, 2019, around 6:44 a.m., Dallas police received a call in reference to a body being found on the 7200 block of Valley Glen Drive. When authorities arrived on the scene, they found the body of an unidentified black woman lying face down in the street. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The victim would be identified as Muhlaysia Booker, a black transgender woman who had been brutally attacked by a group of men a month prior to her death.
It is these horrific images where people in Dallas learn Muhlaysia Booker's name. The transgender woman was brutally attacked outside an Oak Cliff apartment complex in April. Tonight,
the victim was positively identified as Muhlaysia Booker.
I'm just really speechless.
Rodney Kelly lives nearby. He says he had no idea anyone had been killed, but admits after that video he knows Booker's story well. After her attack in April, Dallas detectives worked to identify those seen throwing punches at her. One arrest was made. Tonight, DPD says there is nothing yet to connect that individual to Booker's murder.
Hate crimes, if you will, are a serious topic. We at the Dallas Police Department take them serious, and it's just unacceptable.
The attack, which is too violent to be shown here, was recorded by onlookers and uploaded to social media. What led up to this violent attack was a minor fender bender. Muhlaysia had backed into a man's vehicle, and instead of him handling things the right way, exchanging insurance information and waiting for police to arrive, he pulled out a gun and demanded money from Muhlaysia to pay for the damages. When she refused, he offered $200 to any onlookers who had beat up Muhlaysia. Edward Thomas, who had been at the scene, took him up on his offer, kicking, punching, slamming, and dragging Muhlaysia until a group of women pulled her to safety. Edward was charged with felony aggravated assault, but before the trial could even begin, the semantics regarding Muhlaysia's gender would become an issue. Defense attorneys argued that the victim, Muhlaysia Booker, should be identified by her birth name, Pierre, as well as her gender assigned at birth. Defense attorneys argued that if Booker was presented as a female to jurors, it would tip the scales unfairly against their client because of bias against men hitting women. However, the judge would rule that Muhlaysia would be identified by her chosen name and gender, which allowed the case to proceed. Edward was later convicted of the lesser charge of misdemeanor assault by a jury that deliberated for 4 hours. Edward was sentenced to 300 days in jail, and with time served from his arrest in April, it left him with only 4 months left to serve. Unfortunately, by the time Edward received his sentence, police had been investigating Muhlaysia's murder, which means she never got the chance to see what little justice she had received. It's because of the incident that police decided to interview Edward. Had he held a grudge against Muhlaysia? Did someone he know decide to harm Muhlaysia? After a lengthy investigation, police made no connection between Edward Thomas and Muhlaysia's death. Around the time of Muhlaysia's death, black transgender women were on a higher sense of alert, more so than usual. They were in fear that there may have been a serial killer in Texas, targeting black transgender women.
When you leave here, understand that her funeral may be tomorrow. We may be gathered today. Don't forget that this is our family here in Dallas that has died. Empathize. The same day another trans sister died in Philly as well. That means that there is a crisis going on. That means that transphobia is still high. That means that we have leaders that's not recognized.
A few months prior, 29-year-old Brittany White was found shot to death in a car in southeast Dallas. On June 1st, the body of 26-year-old Chanel Lindsay was pulled from White Rock Lake, but her killer, Ruben Alvarado, was found and sentenced to 37 years in prison. He had strangled Lindsay to death after claiming he did not know she was transgender. In another case, a second 26-year-old transgender woman was repeatedly stabbed and left for dead in South Dallas, but miraculously the woman survived and provided information about her attacker. The list of unsolved cases dated all the way back to 2013, when the body of a black trans woman by the name of Artegas Madden had been found, riddled with bullet wounds in her Savannah home, a small town east of Denton. 2 years later, the body of a 22-year-old black trans woman, Lled Schuler, had been found. She too was shot to death. Literally, days after Muhlaysia's murder, in May 2019, police had already begun investigating 2 other cases, the fatal shootings of Letitia Grant, 35, and Kenneth Saikaki, 29. Since those are ongoing cases, authorities have not revealed a motive for their killings, But one thing they were certain of is that the main suspect, Kendrell Lyles, was involved in both of their homicides, and it was his car that led to his apprehension. It was this same car that witnesses described as having frequented a well-known area in Texas, where transgender prostitutes are known to operate, including Malaysia. After interviewing multiple witnesses, reviewing surveillance footage, going through Malaysia's cell phone records, as well as pinging her phone's location on that fateful night, authorities believe Malaysia had been working in that area where she was picked up by Lyles, who was driving a Lincoln LS around 3:25 that morning. Police could also see that Lyles and Malaysia's phones had been traveling right next to one another on the morning her body was found. In June of 2019, Lyles, who had already been locked up, awaiting trial for the murders of Letitia Grant and Kenneth Sakaki, was charged with the murder of Muhlaysia Booker.
Late this afternoon, Dallas police announced a break in their investigation of recent murders of black transgender women. Thanks to a tip from the public, witness statements, and cell phone data, detectives were able to link the murder case of Muhlaysia Booker to 2 other killings that happened days before her death. Fox 4's Alex Boyer is at Dallas Police Headquarters with information on the suspect and the status of the investigation of 2 other transgender murders. Alex.
Hey, good evening, guys. That's right. Dallas police credit the public with helping them to connect the dots between 2 seemingly unrelated murders and the murder of Muhlaysia Booker. Now, the suspect, who appears to have no criminal history, is now charged with 3 counts of murder and is a person of interest in a 4th.
And Mr. Lyles was arrested on June 5th of 2019.
Dallas police detectives say 34-year-old Kendrell Lyles is responsible for the May 18th murder of 23-year-old Muhlaysia Booker. But it was Lyles' arrest for 2 unrelated murders in the Collin County area of Dallas back in May that gave them the break in Booker's case.
During the course of investigating these 2 cases, detectives recognized that arrestee Lyles drove the same type of car that is believed to have picked up Muhlaysia Booker on May 18th.
Booker's body was found ditched on the side of the road behind the Tennyson Golf Course. At the time, police said Booker was believed to have been in the area of Spring and Lego in South Dallas shortly before her murder. Investigators didn't reveal it at the time, but had reason to believe Booker got into a light-colored Lincoln LS, which is reportedly the same car driven by Lyles. Detectives say cell phone records also placed them at the scene of the crime.
And it further put him around Spring and Lego at the time Muhlaysia was picked up on May 18th, and later at the scene of her murder.
Booker's friend Kurt Myers, CEO of Abounding Prosperity in South Dallas, spoke to me by phone.
We're glad that the police took this serious, and this is a good day. So now we want to make sure that he's prosecuted.
Booker is one of 3 black transgender women who have been murdered in the city of Dallas in the last 8 months. Brittany White, who used to go by Traylon Brown, was murdered last October. Her family only released this photo before her transition. And shortly after Booker's body was found, the body of 26-year-old Chanel Lindsay was pulled from White Rock Lake on June 1st. Detectives say Lyles may also be responsible for Lindsay's murder.
With regard to the victim that was found in White Rock Lake, Mr. Lyles is a person of interest in that case.
Lindsay's cousin, who has been begging the community for tips since her murder, reacting to the news.
If this is the person, he needs to be held accountable to what he did, because it's not right. He needs to suffer and he needs to pay.
It may have taken years, since 2019 to be exact, but Kevin LeVar Lyles was finally sentenced in the death of Muhlaysia.
Pierre Booker says he simply wanted justice for his child, Muhlaysia Booker. Now, some 4 years later, the man who took her life has been sentenced.
I didn't want him to die. I didn't want him to take death penalty. I just wanted him to go somewhere where he could sit and think about the trauma that you caused other people's family.
37-year-old Kendrell Lyles pleaded guilty to murder for the 2019 shooting death of Booker, a transgender woman. Pierre says Muhlaysia was looking forward to moving on with her life until it was cut short by Lyles.
48 years. Do you feel like that's justice?
Not really, but my thing is, life is life.
As for the murder, Dallas police have not named other suspects beyond Lyles, but Pierre isn't convinced Lyles acted alone and says this one question haunts him.
The only thing I really want to know is what was my child's last words before y'all committed y'all's act? Did they beg for their mama? Did they beg for me? Did they beg for granny, papa, or something?
Lyles will face Booker's family this week during victim impact statements before completing his 48-year sentence. Pierre Booker says he carried a heavy burden following Malaysia's murder.
I was like, man, maybe something I done when I was younger is this punishment for what I done. That's how I felt.
Now he's thankful to see justice as he learns to live without her.
We needed you, but God gave you a better job. He needed you more than we did.
Police still do not know what drove Lyles to fatally shoot Muhlaysia. Was there an argument? Was it overpayment for services? If Lyles had frequented the area and had several encounters with trans women in the past, what made this experience with Muhlaysia different? We know this wasn't his first time killing, considering he had already murdered Letitia and Kenneth prior to shooting Muhlaysia, but had he murdered other trans women and had their deaths gone unnoticed? Young people in the LGBTQ community, specifically those who have been shunned by their loved ones, are oftentimes forced into homelessness, living in rundown motels, or having to resort to hopping from couch to couch. They may have to sell their bodies, which in turn puts them at greater risk for meeting shady characters who may want to do them harm. Trans women may not have a 9-to-5 job, where if they go missing for a few days, their employer may alert a person of contact or the police, which leads these predators to think to themselves, if I murder this person, who is going to know? Who is going to care? A perfect example would be Jeffrey Dahmer. Some of these psychos have deeply rooted hate because they cannot come to terms with being trans attracted. They enjoy the act of sex, but once it's over, they realize what they have done, and in order to cope, the only solution is to get rid of whatever is causing them anguish. The North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition has a list of ways sex workers can protect themselves when working with clients. As a sex worker, you should never use a customer's drugs. Use your own if you are going to use them. This will protect you from taking a drug that may be laced with something that may incapacitate you. They recommend not wearing clothes that will slow you down just in case you need to run, and avoid wearing jewelry or scarves. You should always get your money up front. Set a price list and time limit and stick with it. If an argument ensues over payment, as much as it sucks, you may have to abandon the situation without payment. Although we as humans put so much value in money, money can be made back. Your life cannot. Know where your exits are, keep your eye on them, and use a buddy system so that someone knows where you are. And if you need to, carry some form of protection. You can never be too prepared in these situations. Some may ask, why can't transgender women just get a job? Well, there is a lot of discrimination in the workplace.
Transgender woman is suing a Decatur Chick-fil-A restaurant for discrimination tonight. We have a copy of that lawsuit. It claims that former employee Erin Taylor was harassed by a co-worker, and when she complained about it, the vulgar comments increased. The lawsuit says Taylor reported the advances to upper management and claims that those managers disclosed her gender identity to other co-workers without her permission. We sat down with Taylor today. She tells us her co-workers began to make homophobic remarks, even threatened her life.
I was terrified just because, unfortunately, today we see trans women, especially trans women of color, are getting attacked. They're getting murdered. And unfortunately, it isn't getting covered. And so to be in that situation to where, I don't know this gentleman, I don't know his motive. I don't know what he's capable of. And to see that this is going on and to think that it's even a possibility in a professional setting was horrifying to me.
According to that lawsuit, Taylor started her job last August. Her employer says she was fired because she abruptly walked off her shift, but Taylor tells us she believes she was let go because of discrimination. Now, we did ask Taylor what she wants from this lawsuit. She tells us she only wants to bring awareness for other trans people in the community to come forward if they feel threatened. She and her lawyer did not tell us how much they're pursuing in damages. We did reach out to Chick-fil-A's corporate office, who directed us to the attorney for the local franchise.
People are more likely to be unemployed compared to cisgender people. 34% of Black trans people live in poverty. Trans people without a college degree and trans people who have experienced homelessness are even more likely to engage in sex work. These are some of the reasons why sex workers are disproportionately Black or Latinx trans women. Because of the criminalization of sex work, trans women who are in that industry are more likely to be incarcerated than the general population. In jails and prisons, transgender individuals are often misgendered, put in men's facilities, where they are at higher risk of being assaulted. Taunted by staff and cellmates, with them asking whether their hair is detachable and making them take their wigs and things off just to embarrass them. The punishment doesn't end there. Once you get out of jail or prison, a past conviction can prevent you from getting a job, housing, healthcare, or other services. Being trans is expensive. The surgeries and medical care aren't cheap, and a lot of times, the surgeries are not covered by insurance. Which goes back to why so many trans women resort to sex work. For the time being, it may be their only option. Transgender women, such as Malaysia, regardless of their gender identity or profession, unequivocally deserve to live without fear of discrimination, violence, or unjustifiable bias. Society needs to prioritize the protection of their rights, embrace diversity, and foster empathy. By advocating for equal treatment, supportive legislation, and eradicating societal stigmas, we can create an environment where all individuals, irrespective of their gender identity, can flourish and feel safe. It is high time that we recognize the value and worth of every human being and ensure that trans women are no longer subjected to violence or discrimination solely because of their identity. Open dialogue is key in fostering understanding between different communities. Creating safe spaces for conversations about trans inclusivity allows for empathy, compassion, and personal growth among individuals from diverse backgrounds. It is imperative that society embraces the idea of men dating and loving trans women as wholesome relationships deserving of respect. By promoting education, advocating for inclusivity in media representation, challenging stereotypes, and encouraging open dialogue, we can work together towards creating a more accepting world where love knows no bounds and men no longer have to hide their attraction to trans women, lessening the chances of them being harmed.
Family and friends gathered to remember Muhlaysia Booker today. WFAA's Ariel Placencia was at Cathedral of Hope.
If you look around, you can tell that Muhlaysia was loved. She was beautiful. She was so beautiful.
When Muhlaysia Booker's mother spoke during the funeral today, she had everybody's attention.
If you asked me years ago, I wouldn't even think I'd be standing here doing none of this.
Stephanie Houston, choosing to share intimate details with all 440 people inside the Cathedral of Hope.
He was born to me as Pierre. Pierre always been a character. He always been the upbeat, happy child. Muhlaysia was a split image of me, but it was so hard for me to see because to me he was my son. So my son's supposed to act different, and my girl's supposed to act like me. That's what I thought. Her back has been against the wall so many times. And that's one of the reasons I didn't want her to be who she was, because it's already hard for a black man. Then a black gay man that want to be a transgender. See, I seen all the hate and all the stuff she went through was the things I wanted to prevent her from going through.
Today's crowd included Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings, dozens of speakers, friends, family, pastors, and singers. The Booker family and transgender community coming together to say one final goodbye.
What she came here to do, she fulfilled.
I hope your days in jail are a living hell, you bastard. Hope you can't even sleep at night, knowing that you took away a valuable person.
We pray that 48 years you feel the weight of your actions and the enormous loss you caused.
Well, let me tell y'all what this monster did to my baby. He put 3 bullets in my baby.
Remember to like the video as this pushes it through the algorithm. Subscribe and put your notifications on so you are alerted every time I post. Share the video across all of your social media platforms. Was there something you learned? Something you agreed with or something you disagreed with? Let's get the discussion going, respectfully in the comments. Let your voice be heard, but please try to remain respectful, not only to the victims, but also to their family and friends who are left on this earth with nothing but memories. Rest in heaven. Muhlaysia Booker, along with all of the other beautiful souls who were mentioned in this video.